Hey guys, welcome back for another video. Coming at you with a different subject I like to touch on periodically, and that's about treating fish, quarantine and medication, and little tips and tricks you can do to make it easier and take some of the confusion out of it. Not as complicated as you might think. Let's get right into it. So this is my 75-gallon parrot tank. I also have a pleco I rescued in here. These guys are awesome. They got great personality, beautiful colors. I love them a lot. But as some time went on, I noticed one of them, this one over here, on his gills, he was developing these kind of like white spots that were a little stringy and coming off on both sides. So I wanted to attack this early. I didn't want it to become an issue. I'm not quite sure what that is. I don't think it's quite gill flukes. If anybody knows, definitely comment below and let me know what you think those white spots are on his gills. You can see them there, and they're on both sides. He clearly doesn't have the same thing, so I know there's something going on there. As you can see, this tank is a little dark. This tank is like this just because I went through some medication. So I like to try to keep things as simple as possible. Again, in this hobby, there is no magical wand for any single solution. And that's definitely the case with disease, parasites, viruses, whatever the case may be. But you will encounter this if you keep fish at one time or other. It happens. You can be the best fish keeper in the world and still wind up with trouble. That doesn't mean you're bad. You just try your best to provide a solution. I'm the kind of guy that'll take a $1 to $2 guppy and put him in quarantine and spend $30 of medication to save him. I'm like that with all my pets: dogs, birds, fish, cats, anything. Once I get a pet, it is my commitment. I never get rid of them. They're mine forever, and that's how I look at it, so I do what I got to do to keep it that way. Long story short, you got to kind of get some charts. I put together and printed off some charts and laminated them, made myself like a little quarantine disease logbook with all the different medications that apply to them. I know it can be confusing when it comes to this because there's a lot of medications that do the same thing, but some are different, some are named different, some are a little stronger than the others. You just have to kind of do your research and figure out what those medications and those diseases are. And there's a lot of other videos out here from people that have already covered that subject. I'm not going to go too deep into what each medication is because that would be a very long video and there's just too much to cover. So I'm about making it easier. I'm a beginner friendly channel, and I'm just going to cover the basic stuff that most of your fish that you're going to get from fish stores have, and what you can use to cover that. So let's check it out. You can kind of see it here. I created a little section in my cabinet for a quarantine and medication area only. In here, I like to keep on hand at all times API General Cure, API Erythromycin, and API Fin and Body Cure. Of course, you see I got some Sea Chem Paragard and some other stuff handy. I got these with a deal on a fish tank I recently purchased, so I'm not going to turn it down. Over here is Fritz's Paracleanse. That was the last medication I bought. The Fritz medication is a little harder for me to get a hold of because there's only about one store I can get it locally, and that's about an hour drive, where API medication is pretty much in every store and much easier to get, because a lot of times this isn't going to be a time thing. This isn't something you can prepare for. When your fish comes down with something, it's going to be at the worst times. It's going to be at nighttime when you're about to go to bed or taking a trip or whatever. So it's always good to have it and not need it, and instead of need it, not have it type of thing. First and foremost, the easiest, most natural way for treating fish diseases and bacterial diseases and viral diseases, you want to think of the easiest thing first. Don't go nuts. Let's do this as natural as we can, and that's easiest we can on the fish. Start with aquarium salt. If it's not too bad, you can put the fish in quarantine or leave it in the tank it's in and use aquarium salt. There's several different doses depending on the degree of your issue. I always go by the instructions on the aquarium carton that the salt comes into, which is a tablespoon for every 5 gallons. And because, like anything you can do too much of, anything is a bad thing. So I start with the instructions on the box. If I feel I have to move it up, then I'll move it up. Aquarium salt does treat a broad spectrum of issues, and it's a lot cheaper and pretty much more safe for the fish. But I know that, and I have treated with salt, but I like to go to the meds. When I'm buying, I put a video out on this. I know you guys watched it. If you haven't, it's on there. Check it out. But this is just like a quick video for a quick guide, right? So when I buy new fish, boom, I put them in quarantine and I hit them with the treadmill. The Med Trio. And that's API General Cure, API Erythromycin, and IC-X. I use all three together. They're all safe to use together. You put them in there, buy the instructions, and you proceed forward. The Fritz Trio is Fritz Paracleanse, Fritz Maricin, and IC-X. That's a little different. If you follow Aquarium Co-op's channel, he has an awesome information about this. You basically don't use their instructions. You use a packet per 10 gallons of water, and you let them soak in that for a week, and then that's it. That's all you do. It's a little simpler than using API Med Trio, but in the end, they're both going to get you there. It just depends on what's available to you and what you can get a hold of the quickest if you don't have it. My suggestion to you is, if you care about your fish a lot and you want them to live, get these medications ahead of time and have them in your cabinet like I showed you previously, and then you'll be prepared. These medications is broad spectrum. It's going to treat everything inside and out, the things you can see and you can't see, and it's going to get you there. And I've been doing it for years, and I rarely have an issue with my fish. But I do have issues. Don't let anybody tell you that, oh, I've never had a fish die or I never have issues. If it's true, it's going to happen sooner or later. There's a lot of variables when it comes to fish getting diseases. It may or may not always be your fault. It could be stress. It could be just something that the fish had that came out, or like with you and a dog, anytime you have an issue, something else that you might have gets exasperated and comes to the surface. Like let's say you get a nasty infection and you're getting it treated, but all of a sudden, oh man, my right leg's hurting at the same time, because maybe that, like a secondary infection, or it just allowed that issue to come forth, and it was just a domino effect. This happens in any and every living thing. So, but getting back to the parrot tank, I'll tell you what I did. Well, like I was saying earlier here, you seen the white spots in his gills. I went ahead and I treated this tank with Paragard. Okay? I started with that, and I did that for a little bit. I didn't see it getting any better. So I went ahead, did a water change. Okay? Water changes is good. Anytime you add meds to tanks, you reduce oxygen. So if you don't have a lot of flow from your filter, add a power head or an air stone, get a little bit more oxygen, because it does lower oxygen, and that would stress the fish out even more, making their condition worse. And so also depleting the oxygen ain't good. If you can't breathe, that's not good, right? So add those things to help increase oxygen anytime that you are medding a fish, whether it be in your display tank or in a quarantine tank. It's important in both of them. So yeah, the Paracleanse wasn't working, so I went ahead and I added the API fin and body. That acts like an antibiotic. That is API's antibiotic, and it works good, and it works for a lot of things like funguses and stuff like that. And I believe that's what he has. I think this is some kind of a fungus. And since I've added it, I have seen a reduction in the spots. They were worse than that. If you look through my videos on my channel, because I post these guys a lot, you might see in one of them videos how it looked versus now. So once you've treated, let's say you've treated your fish, and it's time to, it's done. You've treated him, he's better, you're happy, you've learned something, right? So now we need to get those medications out. How do we do that? It's very simple to get medications out of the tank. Water changes. You got to definitely do a water change. Help get that meds out there. As you can see, for whatever reason, that API Fin and Body Cure always makes my tank look like it has tannins in it every time. That tank was clear till I medded that tank. So you do a water change, like 20, 25%, 30%. You can go up to 30%. Do a water change, but you need to add carbon in your filter. You have to add carbon in your filter, because that's going to absorb the medication that doesn't come out. It's going to absorb the medication that's still residual in the tank even after water changes. Even though you've done maybe the water changes and it's been a few weeks, if you don't add carbon, you're not going to get all that out. It's in the filter. It's in everything. You have to use an absorbent media like Purigen or carbon to get it out. Me personally, I just like to use carbon, and that is the only thing I use carbon for. And as a matter of fact, for a while there, I was keeping a hang on the back filter on each tank just for Purigen or carbon when I needed it. But as time went on, I didn't want the extra time of dealing with the hang on the back filters, and during water changes and something else to unplug. So what I do is I have one hang in the back filter that I use for cycling new tanks. I used the pot scrubbers that you get at the dollar store to help, because it's just something very simple to take out of your filter and put in another filter to help quick cycle your tank when you're getting that good bacterial colony started. It is also used to throw your carbon in, or your Purigen, whichever you want to use, to pull medication out. And it's as simple as that. Like I said, I'm not going to go through the whole in-depth detail of what I know as far as medications and different bacterial and diseases and funguses, because it's just too much to get into. But you can definitely do your research. I suggest Aquarium Co-op, Dan over at Everyday Fish Keeping. He's very knowledgeable with this stuff. If you want to learn more, maybe one day I'll put a more in-depth video out myself. But I'm more for beginners, and I like to get to the point to help people out, take the guesswork out of stuff, right? So, long story short, if you have to treat a fish, QT tank is the best option, okay? But you can't always use a QT tank, and a lot of these diseases and fungal and bacterial stuff is contagious, so you might as well go ahead and treat the whole tank. What sucks about that is I would rather med a 10-gallon tank than a 75 or 55 or 125, because it's going to be a lot more, it's going to be a lot less expensive. That's why we have QT tanks, to save the fish in your main display tanks. But like I said, that's not always an option. So if you buy fish, make sure you're prepared. Have your QT tank set up, ready to go, cycled with some media from one of your good filters that you can place in there to insta-cycle the tank. Have it up to temperature if you need the temperature in there for certain types of fish. So when you bring that fish home, you can float him in the QT tank, and he can go in there and spend the next couple weeks to a month, however long you like to QT your tanks, your new fish. And definitely do that before you add them to your display tank. That way you're not spreading disease or anything to your other fish and not losing a whole tank. It's worth the time and the patience to QT your fish before you bring them home. But other than that, in this case, I've had these parrots for a while. Stuff just shows up. So, long story short, try to identify what it is. If you don't know, get some help in the fish tube community, and ask questions, Google, research, and you can attack that issue with the appropriate medications. And I'm going to be honest with you, anytime I have an issue, I don't take the chance. What I do is I do the med trios right off. I don't care, regardless of what it is or what I think it is. I could be wrong. I don't take the chance with new or sick fish. I just hit them with the med trios, and after I'm done with the med trios and I do a water change, then I go ahead and I put my salt in. And for the remainder of the quarantine time, or the remainder of the time they need to get better from what they already have, they're also getting hit with salt. Some fish are a little bit more sensitive to salt, but I have used salt on cory cats, plecos, and I got snails through this tank, and I put it in my display tanks. The only thing that really suffers in plants is plants. In the end, what do you care more about, the plants or the fish, right? So that's it. Just a quick, sick fish video. If you have any questions about it, leave some comments, and we can talk some more on it. And any hobby, there's always conflicting advice, but this process has always worked for me. I don't take any chances. I just hit them with the meds. I'm getting everything in and out. My fish are always happy and healthy. They're still alive. I haven't lost a fish in a long time. Knock on plastic here, that never happens. I mean, it's going to happen inevitably. It's just going to happen, but that's to hoping that they live long lives and let them die of old age. And it works for me. So you guys have a good rest of your day or weekend, wherever you're at, and be safe. Thank you.